Hey there, everybody. Lisa Duerre here. I'm so excited to have you all live. We are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So I gotta get woot woot. We're trying something new and spreading the message out. You're welcome, welcome, welcome to Real Talk with Lisa. What I wanted to do today is continue a conversation that started last week with a dear colleague, friend, work wife, soul sister, Gabriella Coplan. So I've invited her back today. So if we can bring her up, Rand, that would be awesome. There she is. Gabes is in the house, everybody. How you doing,
Hi,
Gabe?
I'm good. Can you hear
I'm so
me?
glad.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
Yeah, so cool. So last week, we were talking about strengths and the power of partnership. We were telling stories about our work together, some of the client work we've done. And over the weekend, I started really thinking about what would be useful today and knowing how much is going on in the world. I was really inspired whenever you write about, when you read something from Gallup and specifically about Clifton, you always pull through on your LinkedIn posts and in our conversations. And I thought, why shouldn't we keep this conversation going? So here we are.
I know, it's
I know.
great.
It's great. So, anything you want to say before we get started? What's on your mind? What's on your heart? How you feeling? How you
Oh,
doing?
I'm feeling good. I just connected with someone that I was working with on my certification for somatic coaching, and she's just a beautiful soul and just so much light. And so I told her I was doing this, and she's like, "Go get him, Tiger." So
That's
I
awesome.
thought I'm vibrating very high from that conversation. So
Well,
let's continue it.
the relator in you must be very happy.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
So cool. So cool. Well, so for those of you that don't know Gabe's and I, let me just give you a quick story. We've been working together for over 20 years. We discovered CliftonStrengths together in our corporate days when we were working together on a team. And we've brought it through in our consulting work together and separately. And it's just what I know is better together, stronger together. And so what I wanted to do today, Gabe's, was perhaps we can infuse some of our stories. But I thought before we get too deep into strengths, you don't know I'm doing this, but I have a flashback from early days, and I thought I could tie it to a story.
Oh no.
So when you think about, yeah, I know Gabe's is like, what's about to happen? So when you think about working with people that you
Mhm.
enjoy and you appreciate, one of the things that I know is about having fun. And I think fun can come through. It's a core value of mine, and I know it's a core value of Gabe's. Fun comes through in many ways, but Gabe's and I are lifelong learners, and we would go to conferences. And Gabe's, I found this. Let's see if it'll. I don't even know if this is gonna work. Everybody, can you guys see? Let me. So we were at a conference, and this thing moves, and
Oh,
we took these pictures of ourselves, and we're strangling each other, right? And we're
oh yeah,
cracking
there it
up.
goes. There it goes.
Can you see it? Yeah. Look
Yes.
at this. There's Gabe's and I back in the day having some fun. And the reason I thought I would bring this up is when your strengths are not understood, you might feel like doing that to your colleague. Like you and I were joking when we built this, right? We were cracking up at this, but how many times are you at work and you're thinking, man, this person annoys me, or how come
Mhm.
my boss doesn't understand, or why is the board, on me again? And when you think about that, I just thought, how cool if we could see, like, how can we not be doing this to each other through the lens of strengths?
WWE right there. We look like we're about to throw down.
Do you remember doing this?
Yes. Yeah,
I
and
was
it's
looking for a
dates. I was
date. I'm
looking.
like, I don't even have a date.
Yes, I don't remember dates, but I do remember that.
And
So,
we were at an MPI conference. I think we were looking at how to make our events the best, right? And we were just
hmm
thinking, oh, this would be fun. So whoever Denon and Doyle is these days, Denon and Doyle, we were doing this. So
yeah.
one of the things I know is I lead through influencing. And when I'm
Mhm.
leading through influencing, sometimes I have a lot of ideas. I can ignite the world and bring everybody forward. And sometimes people who lead in execution, I frustrate them.
Mhm.
Right? Because they're just like, okay, Dury, how many ideas do we have and what's a real action item in here? So when you think about just strengths in general, Gabes, and I don't know if I can put you on the spot, but thinking through this lens right now of if you have a colleague you want to be doing this with and it's not playful, what do you think about from a strength standpoint? What would you like to presence right now? And then we'll jump into some of our data.
Well, I think that that's where strengths is such a valuable asset to a team to know. And we're not talking about the weaknesses, right? We're talking about people's strengths. So that when people are in the grip, we use another term from another assessment we like.
We love
Um,
the grip stuff. Yep.
yeah, in the grip, that knowing people's strengths and knowing what they're dominant in, because you're dominant in influencing, I'm dominant in relationship building. And while influencing themes, there's some similarity, it's also very different. And so if we know that about each other when we're in a place of stress or feeling overwhelmed, then we can be playful. Either we can say, hey, my relator's large and in charge, and you're over a Maximus. We need to make everything as great as possible. There could be some conflict there, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's where the strengths conversations are really powerful in times of stress and overwhelmed.
Yeah. So, dude, what I think we might want to do today is Gallup just came out with a new report, and it's a burnout prevention guide. And I've been sharing it with our clients. I've been looking at it myself. And let's just land this for everybody. So at RLD Group, everybody does CliftonStrengths when we do our engagements together. We have our
Mm-hmm.
frontline data, right? And I thought when we take a look at our different themes, we have executing, strategic thinking, relationship building, and influencing. There is a predominant focus here on execution inside tech, and we know this, right? But I thought what we might do is actually talk through the coping strategies activity that's actually in the work, that's actually in the download that everybody can have, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I know when we get here on the coping strategies, we all think we're helping ourselves and we think we know what to do, but if we look at through the lens of strengths, there's things we could be doing that could help us get our energy back and not feel like we want to be doing this to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So before I jump into it, nobody has to like take the quiz or figure it all out right now. But what I thought we might want to do is just have a conversation about how the coping strategies we think work for us when you overlay the strengths lens, what becomes possible, because there's some nuances there that if you're ever feeling like, why is this so hard and how come I can't move this through? It might be that the coping strategy you're using isn't the right one.
Yes.
So before we jump into it, Gabes, what thoughts do you have on that?
Well, I think the first thought is that as we talk about this, I encourage people to kind of think about their own situation, and maybe just make a mental note of where they're at right now, and that could be as easy as when they're thinking about some stressor in their life, because we all have stressors in our lives that don't go away. But where are you at with it right now, and are you in the overwhelmed, completely depleted, or are you where, okay, I think I can manage through it if I can just get through this time? So kind
Mhm.
of just checking in with yourself as we're talking about some of these things.
I love it. Yeah. One of the things that I would say have a learner's mind and stay open, right? Because we're all professionals. We've been doing this for a long time, many of us, and we tend to know, oh yeah, yeah, I got that. But even this weekend, when I was reflecting and thinking about this today, doing this live, sometimes I forget, and I teach this and I live this. Sometimes I forget, oh yeah, I think that's going to be helpful. Not this really is. So even when I was just reflecting back, I'm like, oh, I learned something new again, or that's a great
Mhm.
reminder. So whether or not you know your Clifton strengths, whether or not you've worked with RLD group, whether or not this is your first time even seeing who Gabes and Lisa are, the invitation for this conversation today is just to simply notice what might add value to your life to reduce your stress and to help you, prevent burnout if possible, or at least hold it at bay while you're navigating all this. And
Mhm.
if you want more help, we're here. We want to help people. We love helping people. We know how to do this work. But right now, Gabes, let's think about off the top of my head, I wonder if it would be more helpful to just through the lens of our own strengths tell the stories so that it
Mhm.
can land for people. But from a coping strategy, one of the things I know in the activity, right, is there's these questions. So the first thing is I almost always do this is one side, and then the other side is I rarely ever. So we'll just go down real quick and we'll just almost always or rarely ever. One coping strategy. I spend more time with family and friends outside of work. So when you think of execution being the highest in tech, right? I giggle at this one, right? What I know and the way I burnt out was I was at my desk all the time, every day, nights and weekends. So if the
Mhm.
coping strategy is to spend more time with family and friends outside of work, it's just to check in to see are you doing that or not, right? We're not here to tell you have to, but it
Mhm.
can be helpful. So Gabes, I know in the somatic work you do too, that this really comes into play here about spending time and connecting. So, what are your thoughts on that as we just think about if your coping strategy is this, but you're not doing it as often as you'd like? What's an invitation or a tip you give clients?
So one of the things is asking yourself. So one of the things that we do in somatic coaching is we talk about the natural laws. So I'm just gonna really quick. It's always around us. So in your case, because you lead with influencing,
Mhm.
people who lead with influencing, they do benefit from connecting with family and friends. That's one of their coping tips. But if you're an executing person, connecting is, can you come up with a list of things you need to do, and that you only mark off one, a day on the weekends? Because again, when you're talking about people in tech, they're always on, right? They're
Mhm.
always connected. They're always, so what can you do to allow yourself to have this space that you feel like you're still making progress, but it's not completely taking over all of your time, when you can be spending it with your, significant other, your family, your friends, or going out for a bike ride and stuff. So
Mhm.
it's giving yourself the latitude to pick and choose, like still having that accomplishment happen, because executing people need it, but at the
Mhm.
same time you're still getting the deposit in the banks for your personal, life and well-being.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I know it's true for me, and I'm sure you've seen this, Gabes. But you have this tip for people, and I don't have time. I'll do it tomorrow. Right. There's like this initial reaction. So if you're having that reaction to this coping strategy, I feel you, I see you, right? And I would say
Mm-hmm.
simply notice your reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Simply notice your reaction. Because one of the things that I know in the past year is I haven't spent as much time with family and friends. And Gabe, you actually commented to me the other day, like, I'm happy to see you doing more of that again, Lisa. Right?
Yeah.
Because I know I need that. And sometimes I forget. And so I have a reaction to that, like, oh, maybe my reaction's telling me more than the reaction itself.
And
So,
really quick, something that's popped into my head that we are programmed working in tech. I'm going to use tech because that's the background. We are programmed to always be on.
mhm,
It is very much programmed into our DNA. When I left tech, I actually had to seriously take some time off. I didn't even know what it was like to not be always on, and even as simple as checking my phone in the morning when I would get up, right? And
mhm.
people, oh, I got to that. Those are things, when you think about how we cope in an environment that is constantly going, that's part of it. And so allowing yourself the space to not check everything off the list, it's going to feel really uncomfortable. It just is, because you're not used to it. And so I do invite people to allow themselves the awareness, like you talked about, have the curiosity, give themselves a little task, try it out, see how it feels. I'm going to say feels, see how it feels and stuff, because that's not a normal way that we go about our days when you're working in high tech.
Yeah, I always talk about always on, never good enough, we'll replace you tomorrow. So you're constantly in this like, I have to be everything to everybody. And I know I felt
Mhm,
that way. And
mhm,
what's interesting is the next coping strategy, which ties to what you're saying, is I start getting back to work as quickly as possible.
mhm,
Right? And so it's literally like if your coping strategy is get right back into work, that might not be serving you. And I know for me, when I burnt out and I took my medical leave, my husband actually had to hide my phone from me because
mhm.
I was still checking, wanting to help, right? And he told on me to my doctor. He's like, she's still on her phone. And the doctor's like, stop. You are on
Right,
medical
Randy.
leave. Right. And then so the solution was to get me a phone that wasn't tied to work. And that
Mhm,
we had to literally turn my work phone off inside corporate. And when I was in corporate, I had to like turn the phone off.
mhm.
So if the coping strategy is getting back to work as quickly as possible, you may think that's helping, and sometimes it's actually hurting, right? Because you need the white space.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
The next one, I think about how my work affects others as a coping strategy. This is what we think is a great coping strategy. I think about how my work affects others. I can tell you as a leader, I thought about that constantly. It's probably why I did the journey of self-awareness I did, to even know that my high input might be driving other people crazy, because I have high input, high activator. And I found myself obsessing about everybody else, trying to make sure they were okay and then not worrying about myself.
Mm.
So I
And
used
so,
to think about that.
but the opposite of that is people who don't think about how their work affects. So, and I will give an example of working with someone who, very, very hard worker, like the workhorse in the group, always, always working. And and yet incredibly stressed out. So when this person was experiencing high stress, would be really upset that everybody else wasn't working as hard as they
Mhm.
were.
Yep.
And so their energy, their stress, how they were showing up was actually really at times difficult to work with them. And so and they weren't thinking about how what they were doing was affecting it, and trying to get this person to take time off really, really hard. They would take time off and still be checking their phone, still be responding to emails, still be, hey, let us cover you. You've been
Mhm.
covering us. And so, and I was that person at one point as well. So that's something that's the opposite of thinking about, your people or how what you're doing affects. So
Yeah, I've been guilty of both myself, right? I mean, when I'm
mhm,
in the utmost of stress, I can't even see straight because we're offline and we just have this like tunnel vision of get it done. And I think we think it's a coping strategy that was really like going to be just get back to work. But sometimes when you're in your fight, flight, freeze phase, right?
mhm.
Space, you can't get back to work because you're not even online. You're offline. So your example's a really good one about what it's like to work around people like that who aren't in tune and can't take that break to be able to figure that out.
Well, they're in survival mode. I mean,
Yep.
that's really what it is. They're
Yep.
in survival mode, so they're not able to have any kind of there's no desire to grow or to or they're just trying to get through their
Yeah, and it's
day,
not
you
like, "Let
know?
me go pull out my strengths report and see how I might better
Yeah.
serve my" it's like, "Ah!" Right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's where you need to pull out the compassion.
Yep.
That word is so powerful. It's having compassion for them,
Mhm.
when
Yeah.
you see someone in that space.
Well, it's so interesting because as we're going down this list, I haven't memorized it, but the next one literally is, "I take more breaks during the workday to relax." Like, that's another coping strategy, right? For me, one of the things when I took that medical leave and we hid my phone and I rebooted, I remember doing my one-on-ones walking, and I remember doing lunches outside of my desk and asking the team, "Please hold me accountable. I want to do this differently." Because even getting the sunshine on me was a break. Last week, I
Mhm.
posted on LinkedIn a picture of me sitting outside, and it was just a 20-minute moment. But I posted the picture because I look at myself in that picture. I'm like, I felt so rejuvenated after just 20 minutes of being
Mhm.
outside. And I know, Gabes, you're a huge proponent of taking breaks because you're in the space of the somatic world too. So if you take strengths and somatic together and you think about this coping strategy of taking more breaks to relax, where do you see the sweet spot for your clients?
Uh, so one of the things when I first start working with my clients it seems very simple, but working with them on their bodies. So I help my clients learn how to move their bodies, even if it's just 30 seconds at their desk. And it's hilarious because they're like, what am I doing? And yet I constantly get texts and phone calls. Oh my God. Oh, I just did that before a meeting and I was so much more prepared for the meeting. And so part of it is whether, I'm going to back up. It's so funny when I hear like, hey, you just need to breathe, just breathe. Yes, absolutely. But for many people that we work with, they're like, okay, now what? Like, I took a breath.
Right? I know.
Yeah, and we work with a lot of men, right? A lot of it's
Mhm.
like, okay, Gabe, I breathe. What's next? And so what I will suggest to people, even around depending on their strengths. So, for example, if I have someone who is an overachiever, so they're high on the achieving, then I make them track it because I'm like, look at it, you can get a reward, you get an A plus,
Mhm.
and just kind of be playful about it. But um, one of the things is eating lunch not at your computer if possible. I think that's a key. I also will encourage my clients to not rely on Slack or Teams, but to actually pick up the phone and
Mhm.
call one of their colleagues. Friend. What is it? What
Tend
is
to
it?
be
LinkedIn
friend.
friend.
Yep.
Yeah. So just even if it's just like 15 minutes, just to have that connection. And then I also encourage them to try to have dinner,
Mhm.
not while they're working, because, and they can still go back to work, but just find those moments or take a nap. Oh my God, I'm a big proponent of naps. Power nap, 15, 20 minutes it does a huge job for people in their days because you're constantly going. Your brain needs to rest, people. Your brain
Mhm.
needs to rest. So those are just some of the things that I just start to encourage clients to do as we're working with them.
I love it's awesome. I say I love it so much because I love it so much, but it's awesome. So I'm going to switch my words up. One of the things I've noticed when I work, especially at the C-suite level, is we do an audit of their calendar. Like, where are your breaks? How many back-to-back meetings do you have? And even just that moment of looking at their calendar, like, holy crap, Yeah, where's
Mhm.
time? I'm like, okay, so then let's look at, is that needed? Who else can do that? How might we do this differently? Where are you most energetically awake and alive, and where are you just
Mhm.
drained? And when we look at the energy, sometimes it's just the moment of like, oh my gosh, I really do have more control over my day than I thought. And for the leader who has influence as their top
Mhm.
theme, for me, I know that that can set the tone for the whole team. So what I've been trying to work with our leaders on, especially, is like breathing first, or doing the handshakes, like we know Gabe's, or the. I remember doing this, right? Just like
Slither.
before the meeting, you just blither a little
Yeah.
bit, right? And you just go, "Oh my gosh, okay, I'm awake and I'm alive again." But I think if you lead with influence, that you have a way to actually activate that in the team and normalize it without it being like, "Why is there being all weird?" I mean, Gabe's and I used to work with a leader who had to sing a song about pork chops. We all had to sing it. So if you can sing about pork chops, you can shake your shoulders, right, Gabes?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And strategic thinkers, a lot of people who have strategic thinking, they need to analyze and absorb information. They need thinking time. So if you're a leader and you lead with strategic thinking, oh my, if you have no time to think, that is incredibly depleting on your energy.
Mhm.
And so there's so I had someone I was working with, and he was a strategic think, very futuristic. I'm like, buddy, when do you have time to do that? Like, I don't. I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, it makes sense why you're just not performing at the level that you want to be, because you have no time to actually do, that thinking and finding people on his team who can take on other tasks for him so that he could have more time in his calendar. So you're absolutely right with what you're suggesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that so much. One of the things I'll say when we look at, let's level set for everybody, right? So let's just say you've never been to a strengths program. You have no idea what we're talking about. I'm just going to pull this back up for a second. Right? So this is our most in-demand program. This is the program that we start with regularly with our clients. And I think what's so important is when you use Clifton Strengths, you have 3 times more likely to have an excellent quality of life, 6 times more likely to be engaged in your job, and 6 times more likely to agree that you have the opportunity to do what they do best every day. And Gabe's just hit on that because she said the person leading with strategic can actually lean into other people on their team for the other things that need to get done so that they have time to be strategic. And I think it's really important to know that this can be done on an individual level through a coaching engagement. This can be done through a team workshop. If you've got a bunch of returning to the office initiatives and you're trying to figure out how do you navigate all that, we use this program all the time. And what happens is then you get your data and you get to see what's going on inside your organization on a much deeper level. So, Gabes, can you just talk with me a moment about knowing what we know and knowing that this burnout guide exists and knowing that they can take a look at all of the tips we're giving, why is it important to have a guide, or what is the magic that you see in the workshops you're running with us and on your own? How might taking a moment to say, okay, I know my team is really stressed out. I know I'm just overwhelmed too. If I was to partner with RLD Group or anyone who does Clifton Strengths, like, why would that matter? What do you see the magic in working together?
I think the magic that we see on an individual as well as groups is one, learning about themselves, because oftentimes people have the aha of, oh wow, okay, that makes sense. I do that, and so okay, I see where that fits. Also, to having the awareness of what your weaknesses are, which are just lesser used themes, and not focusing your time on that. Right? We hear a lot about, oh, you need to develop, you need to work on your weaknesses. No, you don't. You need to figure out how to take your beautiful talents and strengths and become kick-ass with them, and then when you know that about your team, then what happens is that people can start to understand when you're peak performance and when you're low performance, and start to support each other. They're not labels. They're meant to be these really beautiful things that you celebrate as a team, and you start to find out what, as a team, what your superpowers are, and to support each other. And I think it's the support and the connecting that we so often see when we're working with groups, and just the laughter that comes out of it. It's really fun. It's really fun when you're like, oh my god, now I know why you do that.
Yeah, now I know why we're not going to be here anymore, where I want to just strangle you, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so
I love
it's
doing the
very cool.
workshops with you. I love doing the coaching with you.
Mhm.
One of the things that I really really appreciate about the leaders who say yes to this is they always come up to us and go, I had no idea how engaging this would be. I can feel the energy in the room. People feel more connected and seen because the way that we're leveraging this tool in these experiences is so much about bringing your heart and the human inside tech, right? And you want to have engagement, you need to know and trust each other. And this is
Mm-hmm.
part of that, right? So
Yep.
I love doing this work with you. I love talking about it with you. And I think what we might want to end on, if we could, so in the report that you can have anytime you want, right? It's not something that we're holding back from the world, but in the executing domain specifically, there was the instinctual coping strategies and then the recommended burnout coping strategies. So I just want to land this, and we'll stay here for now. But when you think about the instinctual is getting back to work right away, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
exercising, physical activity. That's what people in executing domain think is going to get them out of burnout the fastest, right? And what Gallup found is stopping and taking time to think through the situation is more helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And try to find out what's positive about the current work situation actually helps them more. So, with that as the backdrop, Gabes, do you agree? Are you finding this in your world when you're with your coaching clients? I know for me, the getting back to work as quickly as possible is something I'm always encouraging people to slow down and pause. We always talk about pause, notice, and choose.
Yes.
I'd like to bring your voice in here because this is really important for our audience.
I think that I am seeing that with the people that I'm working with, especially around allowing them time to think, which is really the pause, right? That we're talking about is allowing them to pause. I think that it was interesting. When we were looking at that, even the exercise, right? Again, executing, having goals, objectives, and so where are they able to reframe the thinking time that it actually supports, right? It's actually supportive of whatever their objectives and goals are. So helping clients reframe that, because there's a lot of self-judgment around, if I do stop and allow myself to have that space, I'm not really doing anything. Am I really doing anything, Gabe?
Mhm.
Yes, you are.
Mhm.
That is the act of doing, is allowing yourself the thinking space. So I see it a lot with people.
Yeah, yeah. One of the I was trying to think of how to talk about this and not like disclose the person. So give me just one moment. And I have something that I think is so profound. So when you're worried about what people think about you and this always on, never good will replace you tomorrow, and you're the leader, there's this like unspoken, like, look at my calendar shows I'm valuable and busy, and look how busy I am. And busy is not going to help you be innovative. Busy is not going to help you cure cancer. Busy is
Mm-hmm.
not going to help you have the greatest tape out of the next generation, right? Busy is going to help you get a lot of stuff done. And so I think the opportunity that I see with this, especially with the data behind it, is it's almost like the permission slip to rethink busy.
Yes.
Because when you really get down to it, don't your best ideas come in the shower or on the run or after you've had a good night's sleep? And
Yes.
yet we're expecting ourselves to have all these great ideas at 1:15 in the meeting, right? So I just appreciate you saying that, because one of the things that I'm guilty of, and am human, I'm a human person having the human experience as a leader myself, right? That 20 minutes outside last week helped me break through and make that phone call to connect, which then got me back online. So
Mm-hmm.
the invitation I think that I would like to leave people with today in this moment in time right now is, how might you, instead of the instinctual coping strategies in the executing domain, stop and take time to think about your situation and find what's positive. Look for what's positive so you can unlock more. And the question I love to leave people with is, how might I or how might we? I think it's a great reflection question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
That's
last thoughts, Gabes? Any funny stories? Any other things you want to say to help people round out our Real Talk episode today? I'm so glad you're here. And every time you talk, I always have such an appreciation for the tidbits, the wisdom, and the truth. That's why you're on Real Talk with Lisa Duerre. So, what's
Well,
your
thank
Real
you.
Talk closeout for us?
Well, thank you for having me. It was awesome. And what I would just have people reflect on, what is it that you're daydreaming about? Because that's what you really want.
Mm. What is it you're daydreaming about? Because that's what you really want. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listen, everyone, we'd love to help you. If you want to help, if you want some help, we're here. You can go to the Gallup website. You can get that report yourself as well. If you want to talk to us, we're on LinkedIn. You can find us here at hello@RLD Group. Gabes, thanks for being a part of the collective at RLD Group, for being my work wife, my strengths partner in crime, and my guest today. I'm really glad you were here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, Lisa.
All right, everyone, make it a great day.
Bye.